All right, let's just dive right into this explainer because today we are unpacking the anatomy of a fleeting but absolutely profound human connection. We're going to be analyzing a deeply personal, fascinating source text called A Story of Eyes and Phantoms. And what we're really doing here is deconstructing this narrative to figure out how a split-second encounter on a random busy street can literally embed itself into someone's brain for a lifetime. We'll look at the setting, the completely silent mechanics of human attraction, and of course, the heavy emotional toll of a missed opportunity.
But to really get the weight of this story, I want you to think about something for a second. Have you ever shared a complete conversation with a total stranger using nothing but your eyes? Try to recall a time, maybe it was years ago, maybe it was literally yesterday, when this unspoken magnetic pole in a crowded room just changed everything for you. You know that exact feeling, right? That sudden gravity. It's such a universal human experience, but honestly, it is incredibly rare to see it documented with the kind of raw, precise detail that we see in our source material today. So we're going to see exactly how loud silence can actually be. Okay, let's jump into Section 1, A Stranger in Town, the spark in an unfamiliar city.
I want you to imagine the setting described in the text here. The narrator mentions that the evening air felt physically heavy with anticipation. They were a total stranger, just wandering around, completely devoid of any specific expectations for the night. And, that is exactly when life tends to happen, isn't it? When we aren't even looking for it? The author points out that just taking this one single arbitrary path through an unfamiliar city was the catalyst that would alter the memory of their entire trip. The pace of the city is slow, the air is thick, and the stage is just perfectly set for an unexpected collision.
So, the narrator spots a woman walking ahead. But here's the catch. She isn't alone. She's moving through the streets completely surrounded by her family, people the narrator specifically refers to as her protectors. Now, despite this literal human fortress walking around her, there is an immediate, undeniable, and entirely unspoken pull between these two strangers. The narrator starts following her steps, very carefully maintaining a respectful distance, to avoid drawing the attention of the family, but they are totally unable to break this invisible tether that has suddenly connected them.
Let's move on to Section 2, The Silent Conversation, a quiet sequence of glances.
This unspoken dialogue operates so rapidly, almost rhythmically, kind of like a racing heartbeat. She keeps turning her head, over and over, looking back over her shoulders specifically to lock onto his eyes. Not a single actual word is spoken out loud, yet a completely full conversation is happening in real time. Her eyes are actively asking the questions. His eyes are immediately firing back the answers. It's this rapid-fire exchange of intent and curiosity, and it's happening entirely under the radar of the family members walking right next to her. It's wild. And you really have to notice the stark contrast in the reality here. On one hand, you have the objective truth. It's a crowded, noisy street filled with her family and all this chaotic city bustling. But on the other hand, their subjective reality completely takes over. The narrator writes that it felt like everyone else just vanished. The background noise dropped out. The crowd's totally blurred. It's like they were left completely alone in a crowded space, tethered together by nothing more than this silent thread of mutual acknowledgement.
Which brings us to a real turning point. Section 3, A Massive Leap of Faith. The Sacred Majlis and the Agonizing Wait.
So, the woman and her family eventually enter a house where a local religious majlis has been arranged for the ladies. And the text describes this gathering as sacred, pure, and just radiating with spiritual energy. Under the umbrella of this immense communal blessing, the personal stakes of their little encounter are dramatically elevated. It's no longer just a casual flirtation on a random street corner. Their paths have literally locked at the threshold of a deeply spiritual space. It's this huge contrast, right? The sudden rush of worldly romance slamming right into an atmosphere of sacred tradition.
And right at this threshold is where we hit peak tension. Right before she steps inside, she manages one final silent request. She asks for his number. But, oh man, the panic sets in. The narrator just isn't prepared. They don't have a pen, they don't have it ready to hand over smoothly, and just like that, the fleeting windows slam shut. She has to go inside. The moment completely slips away. I mean, think about the pure adrenaline and then the crushing frustration of totally fumbling the exact moment you've been waiting for. That missed opportunity instantly throws the narrator into a state of agonizing suspense.
The sequence of the rest of this evening becomes an absolutely grueling exercise in patience and obsession. First, you had the initial pursuit through the city, then the painful pause as she enters the majlis, and next comes the wait. The narrator literally just waits outside until the entire event concludes and the massive crowd finally disperses. Honestly, imagine the sheer willpower it takes to stay rooted to that exact spot for hours.
But then, finally, we get the climax of the evening, finding the courage to bridge the physical gap, walking right up and handing over the phone number.
There's a specific quote from the source that just hits the nail on the head. A tiny slip of paper carrying a massive leap of faith. I absolutely love the contrast there. On the surface, it's nothing, right? It's literally just a scrap of paper, practically weightless. But emotionally, it is a massive, heavy, terrifying leap of faith. It represents the very real transition from a safe, silent fantasy in your head into a vulnerable, real-world risk. By handing over that little paper, the narrator places all the power completely into her hands.
And that leads us to our final act, Section 4, Chasing a Beautiful Phantom, when reality fades into memory.
And then, just like that, she disappeared. There's this sudden, breathless halt to the momentum. After all that tension, all the waiting outside, the exchange finally happens, and then she is simply gone. We really need to give this vanishing act room to breathe for a second, because it is the exact pivot point where the story shifts from an active, living encounter to a permanent state of longing.
In the empty aftermath of all this, there's a super jarring crash back to reality. The event ends. The banners outside are literally taken down. The house that was so full of life and spiritual energy goes completely devastatingly quiet. Every single physical sign that the Majlis and her presence even existed just vanishes back into the ordinary fabric of the city. Yet the narrator is totally trapped in that timeline, right? Returning day after day, checking the exact same spot at the exact same time. But the street just remains empty. The magic has been completely stripped from the physical space.
Because she is physically gone from the world, she morphs into something else entirely in the narrator's mind. The author uses this really specific poetic term to describe her now, Rima Tom Chimgadaram, framed almost like a documented psychological phenomenon. This basically translates to a ghost or a beautiful phantom that you chase during your waking hours, and a gentle spirit that continues to visit you in your dreams. She is no longer just a woman they saw on the street. She's been elevated to this almost mythological status.
So what's the real takeaway from this entire narrative? I think it's the incredibly bittersweet nature of human memory. The text openly admits that her actual physical face is slowly blurring over time, because time always takes its toll on the specific details, right? Our brains are kind of like leaky buckets. But the feeling, the sheer magic of how their eyes met, that electric silent conversation in that strange city, that emotional impact is permanently etched in stone. That is the part that will never fade.
Which brings us to one final provocative thought I want to leave you with today. When we analyze a source text like this, it really forces you to weigh the value of an experience. Does an encounter actually have to last a lifetime to be meaningful? Or do the memories of our briefest, most magical encounters actually matter way more than their ultimate outcomes? Sometimes a tiny slip of paper and a shared glance is literally all it takes to leave a permanent mark. Thank you so much for walking through this incredible story with me. Keep exploring, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.